What's going on, guys? TowerNumberNine here, and today we're going to take a look at why there is a bad card in Star Wars Unlimited that still sees a good amount of play in tournaments and has actually been very successful. Let's get into it. So let's talk about upgrades. What is a good stat line for an upgrade? Generally speaking, in Star Wars Unlimited, you pay X cost and you get 2X total stats. So one for +1/+1 or +2/+0, for instance. These upgrades also generally often have some text, and maybe they have a usage restriction. For instance, this twin laser turret here is 2 cost for 4 total stats, so that's the X for 2X. It only attaches to a vehicle, but it has a nice on attack ability. There are some upgrades that are less restrictive, but have less of an overall power level. So Academy training here is 2 for +2/+2. It doesn't have any text, but it can go on anything. And then there's other cards that are more restrictive, but they have a higher power level overall. So pilots, like Han Solo has his moments, are very restricted because not only do they only attach to vehicles, they only attach to vehicles that don't already have a pilot, but they generally have very strong characteristics. So uh, Pilot Han here is 2 for +2/+3, which is above the curve, and he has a very relevant text on top of that. And as a pilot, he can also be played as a ground unit. So pilots are really good, but they have more restrictions than some other upgrades. And similarly, there are a bunch of cards that have force synergy that are very good. Jedi lightsaber here is 3 for +3/+3. Again, that's in the X cost for 2X total stats, but it has an incredibly strong on attack ability that only applies if you attach it to a force unit, and you can't attach it to a vehicle unit at all. So generally this sort of thing is the pattern. You get X cost for 2X total stats and some text. There are some upgrades that give more total stats. There are some upgrades that do other things. For instance, there are some that are negative, that like penalize the opponent, or they give you more total stats, but they have a downside. But generally speaking, this is where we're at for upgrades being good in Star Wars Unlimited. X cost for 2X total stats, maybe a good ability. Let's talk about the Darksaber now. So the Darksaber has seen a lot of competitive play despite being bad by the rule that I just described. So the Darksaber is 4 cost for +4/+3. So that is X cost for less than 2X stats. And while it has text, the text is usually really bad. So attached to a non-vehicle unit, okay, whatever. While playing this upgrade on a Mandalorian unit, ignore its aspect penalty. This is kind of good, but the deck that plays this card most commonly is Sabine Green, where ignoring the aspect penalty doesn't do anything. And then attached unit gains on attack, give an experience token to each other friendly Mandalorian unit. This text usually does nothing in the decks that we generally see. There are occasionally situations where you'll play the Darksaber and you'll have unit Sabine or disabling Fang Fighter or something in place. So you get to give out a little experience. But generally speaking, those are pretty rare. This card is mostly seen played just as a 4 for +4/+3. So why is it that that's a relevant thing to do if we just established that that's below curve stats for the cost and the text doesn't generally do anything? Well, it being 4 cost lines up really well with Sabine Wren's deployment. So Sabine deploys on 4 resources, and you can then spend your resources for the turn to give her the Darksaber. And because deployed leaders come into play ready, you can immediately swing with her for 7 damage, 4 for the Darksaber, 2 for her base stats, and 1 from her on attack ability. So that is really, that is really strong and aggressive, and it can be pretty tough for opponents to deal with. There also have not necessarily been good alternatives to the Darksaber. So even though it's an inefficient card, it's an inefficient card in a role that you can't really get otherwise. Now, there are some new alternatives that have challenged this. So the Darksaber's been around since set 2, but in Twilight of the Republic, we saw General's Blade, which is 3 for +3/+3, and it has text about being a Jedi that doesn't do anything for Sabine decks either. However, the stats that you get are more efficient than the stats on Darksaber. It does follow the X for 2X total stats rule. And we did see some Sabine decks replacing the Darksaber with General's Blade. Generally, that is a move that allows you to potentially play it on your opening play. So let's say you start out with a Battlefield Marine on turn 1. On turn 2, you could give the Marine General's Blade. It is maybe a little worse for the Sabine flip turn, though, unless you have a 1-cost card that you want to play, because you might not have something to do with the other resource. So again, the Darksaber might end up being better. And then Yoda's lightsaber came out in the recent Legends of the Force set, and this card has seen a bunch of play recently. Um, Again, its text does nothing for most Sabine decks because they don't even have a way to get the Force token, but 2 for +3/+1 is very efficient, and the stats are loaded towards more power, which is generally the stat that you care about more in an aggro deck. So Yoda's lightsaber has been replacing the Darksaber in a bunch of recent Sabine decks. Not all, but some. The fact that it's a 2-cost also means that you can potentially play it and develop another 2-cost unit on the same turn as well, which can be a very strong play pattern. So Yoda's lightsaber is challenging the Darksaber's place, but it hasn't totally replaced it. You know, I saw there was a recent PQ winning deck, a planetary qualifier in Italy, and I believe the Sabine player who won had 3 Darksabers in the deck. And to me, this goes to show the importance not just of the card quality in a vacuum, but also of like what role is the card playing in your deck. And a card that might be bad quality in theory, below the curve, inefficient, whatever, can be really strong if it's the only card you have that plays that role. So Darksaber has below curve stats and its text generally doesn't do anything, but we don't have other 4-cost stat upgrades right now that just give you big numbers. If there was a card called Double Academy Training, which was 4 for +4/+4 no text, this card would immediately be far better than Darksaber for Sabine and would replace it in almost all Sabine decks, at least as far as I know, because the Double Academy Training, assuming that you're not getting the aspect benefit from Darksaber, the Double Academy Training not only would provide more stats, since you would get an extra hit point, it would also be able to be played on vehicles, which would allow you to potentially put it in space and attack the opponent more aggressively there if they had a bunch of ways to stop you in the ground arena. It would overall be a lot better of a card, even though it wouldn't really be the most exciting card ever. But that card doesn't exist. And so Darksaber, as I was saying earlier, is the only thing that you can really play that serves the specific role of having a 4-cost upgrade that gives you a big block of stats on that same turn that your 4 to deploy leader flips. And as a result, Darksaber is going to live on in some competitive builds. I personally haven't been playing it for a while, but I've also, I've also gone kind of a different direction. I've been playing Sabine Yellow recently. And in Sabine Yellow, I've been playing Qui-Gon's Lightsaber, which is another card that is basically relevant just for its stats. To be honest with you, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what the text of that card even is, because it gives some benefit if played on Qui-Gon Jinn, who isn't even in my deck. So, in that case, it's a 2 for +3/+1, similar to the Yoda's lightsaber, but I found that to be a good solution for me at least. And that said, though, the Darksaber has not gone away completely, and I think most likely it will not go away completely from competitive play until it rotates out with the release of Set 7. So unless Set 6 has that Double Academy training or has some other, 4-cost upgrade that provides a clearly better benefit than what you would get with the Darksaber, I think this card is going to stick around in competitive play despite being one that doesn't get you very good value for the cost. And I think that's interesting and, is maybe worth thinking about when doing card evaluations for further sets and for things post rotation. So if you're interested in countering the Darksaber, there are definitely some options. Confiscate is a very standard option, just defeat an upgrade for 1. The Disabling Fangfighter is even better value because for 3 and a card, you not only get to defeat an upgrade, you also get a 3/2 space unit, which is very nice to have. And then we also, I think there are some options like No Good to Me Dead, Perilous Position, which I didn't put on the slide, but various methods of exhausting your target and therefore preventing them from swinging with that Darksaber. So these sorts of things can be good against that game plan of having one unit that gets really loaded up with a big upgrade. And even if we do see the Double Academy training or we see other cards that provide similar benefits, I think these answers are likely going to be quite relevant. Yeah, so I don't think this is super groundbreaking news, but some people have, definitely been surprised before by how quickly you can be defeated by a Darksaber. And it is, I think, worth mentioning some of the things that you might want to include either in your main deck or in your sideboard in order to counter. So, what do you guys think? Do you think I'm crazy and Darksaber is actually really good? Do you have some argument as to why people shouldn't be playing Darksaber, even though some have been having success with it? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Um, but yeah, that's gonna about do it for this one, guys. Thanks to y'all for watching. I'm Tower Number 9, and I will catch you guys later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content. See you guys soon.